On the Recyard, Women's Prison Podcast, where we are live on the Recyard every Wednesday night. Hey, everybody. It is Wednesday night, and we are on the Recyard, Women's Prison Podcast. I'm Marci Marie.
I'm Toonchi.
Toonchi, you didn't fix your hair before you came on the show?
Honey, it's brushed, it's combed. I'm trying to train it to do this thing where it kind of does this little lay.
Okay.
Oh, well.
You're trying to get jazzy.
Trying to get jazzy and bougie.
Nice. We see you guys in the chat already. My sister-in-law, Devin, is here. Carrie, Kim, welcome in, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is our favorite night of the week, our favorite time for community, and we really look forward to spending this time with you. Please like the live. Please tap your little screen if you're watching on your phone, comment, share, all of those good things. If you're listening wherever you hear your favorite podcasts, we would really appreciate if you left us a review. That helps our podcast reach an even broader audience. Now, I'm trying to talk close to the mic and lower my voice a little because we put the baby to bed a little bit early.
Well, I wanted to tell you, I don't know what you're doing different this evening, but you've got that Delilah voice going on. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Delilah. Love
That's exactly.
somebody tonight.
Yes.
Well,
yes, that's the vibe that I'm going for this evening. Nice and calming so the baby stays asleep. Do you think Delilah leans into her mic like this when she's
on it. And maybe I wouldn't sound, let me tell y'all something. And I apologize. There were 2 or 3 episodes that when I went back and uploaded them to the audio podcast part, Marci, it sounded like I was talking in a tin can. And guess what? Because I didn't have my mic set, it was using the computer's audio. And I don't know why I fuck stuff up all the time.
I don't know either, darling. I really don't. And it's almost like if we met in this virtual space, I don't know, 10 minutes early, 15 minutes early to do these kind of checks, that wouldn't that would still happen.
It would probably still happen.
I wonder if we should get really professional and me start playing with the audio and making it right before we upload it.
We both know our time schedule. That's not going to happen, Marci. So let's not set ourselves up for failure. And I think part of my sound issue is I don't have any carpet. This is all, what do you call this? It's not real wood. Vinyl. What is this on the floor? I don't know. I'm not a carpenter. I don't know. But I don't have a lot of soundproofing. So all I have is a pretty decent mic. And maybe if I get closer to it.
That made a big difference, Toonch.
Did it?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe I need one that attaches that hangs down. But
Well,
then
all
you
the
keep
professional podcasters have those. All the professionals have those. Carrie said that's laminate in your floor.
Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate her so much. Laminate.
Well, should we start with this, Toonch?
Do it.
Let's do a weekly recap. Did I cut you off?
No, I know you wanted to.
I try to time it just right so that you're mid-sentence.
I know you do that. Let's talk about this past weekend.
Yeah. Let's talk. I'll go first.
Please do.
I want to start with, let's see if I'm
on this outfit. I don't take quick.
Oh my God. What's wrong with my hair?
Well, it was like 3 in the morning. To be fair.
But I gotta get rich.
But look how our friend Denise comes out of her sleep and gets right with it. She was sound asleep.
Just landing. They wanna hurt me.
Not the tongue. Let me see if I can turn that off. So, I just wanted the people to understand that how do I get this off my screen? Oh, I see. I wanted the pe no. I wanted the people to understand that you are not just about Taylor Swift.
That's
That
true.
there is some Megan Thee Stallion in you.
Baby, I love her so much, and I can't get to the concert because we're going to be at a conference, but I would do whatever Megan the Stallion ever wanted me to do. Now, if Chanel's watching, I do love Nikki. Don't get me wrong, I do love Nikki. But man, that H Town, Megan, she's cold blooded, baby. So you listen to me and Cherry. We're playing a lot of Megan the Stallion this weekend for you.
Yes, and I had not really ever listened to her before. But I was getting into it, yeah.
So you want to tell everybody what they were doing, and anybody that's watching the video, you'll see that the little table there is covered in cookies and drinks and candy and chips. And Marci ate a bowl of salsa like it was cereal, and so
I made myself sick.
you did for several days.
Yes. For several days that we had a lot to work. I know that video, and for those of you that are listening and not watching, Toonch was really showing her dance moves to Megan Thee Stallion. But the what it was a working weekend. We had work to do. We are having a documentary made about our organization, Linus Justice Impacted Women's Alliance, and the filmmakers were there, and they were trying to interview us all, not all of us, just the members that were able to make it that evening. Were interviewing us in a group setting and then having some one-on-one interviews and then just trying to capture the night. We were able to eat together and play some games together, and hey, that Uno went hard. That Uno
It did.
flip, it went hard and it got rowdy. So
It
we
did.
had a lot of fun. It really did feel like, y'all, there are some moments in prison when the officer is chill. You know, they're not going to let you do a bunch of illegal stuff, but they're going to let you laugh and have fun. And you're there with your friends, and it's not a time that y'all are working. And maybe y'all are playing dominoes or 42, and you're in the day room and laughing and hanging out. You know, that's the vibe. It felt like that time.
It did, and I really enjoyed, us just all being together. And what did I say? So y'all, we did that in Austin, Georgetown area, and then we took off to Houston to go to an event around the launch of Texas Letters. And I'll let Marci talk a little bit more about what that is. But yeah, then we immediately went to Houston and hung out in Houston and went to a great event. Saw some of our advocates at other organizations were there, but it was long, but I had so much fun. I had so much fun, and Marci brought all. I know y'all saw that picture, my little bag with my shades that had just had my boxers and my tank top in it.
Now, Toonch, they have to be following the On the Recyard Facebook page to see those kind of pictures. And there's also that's the way you can see some reels. If you liked Toonchi's dance moves in this little video, make sure you follow us on Facebook because I'm posting those kind of things all the time. And it's On the Recyard Women's Prison Podcast. Now, we have to stop
Okay.
because Department of Corruption Stories, he's not from Texas.
Oh, okay.
And he said, "What's 42?" And I feel like that's a Texas game, and I think it was actually started in Texas, but it's a domino game, and it's serious business.
Serious.
Yeah, it's a domino game, but Carrie S., Team Marci all the way, baby. I feel like Carrie's kind of switched sides on us.
No, she's just being nice to you because she says Team Toonchi to me.
Well, she doesn't seem like she's saying it in this public space where we're on a live stream. It seems like this is the decision is made here in this.
Let me tell you, y'all. So Marcy takes a picture. You'll have to go to the face. I know we're older women and we enjoy our Facebook quite a bit. So just please humor us. But you'll have to go and look at the picture of all of her luggage and gear that she had for an overnight in
2
Houston.
nights,
Two
2.
nights, my bad. And for me, in my little
Fanny
shoulder
pack,
bag.
just about.
Now, she said, we didn't get any work done when we were in Houston. We had to nap a little bit, we had to chill, and we laughed, and whatever. And Marcy, it's important sometimes that we don't always have to work. We can just enjoy each other. And so we had coffee outside, with the sun rising and in front of a fountain. And I just really enjoyed y'all. I really did.
It was really special time, and I got some work done because the things that we were doing was important to our work and to the movement. But usually during the downtime when we're together like that, we're coming up with YouTube videos or making content for other things, and it's my job that my job that pays me my money. It's an important job,
Right.
important part of my life, and so it did feel strange not to be doing that. But in the same breath, I would have missed that morning coffee because I would have been rushing to get camera ready and setting up for, and I would not have been outside sitting for 45 minutes drinking a cup of coffee by a fountain. And it was great. It was good. You're right. And thank you, Tammy, for that. And my Auntie Angela is on. And she said bonding time is very important. And it is. And it was special. It was. I was happy for it. So, yeah.
And I just also want to say that Marcy found a hair tie in the bathroom and gave it to me, and I gave it to Donice, and because I don't have hair, and you cussed me out pretty hard and said I'll never give you anything ever again because you wanted me to put it on my wrist as a bracelet like when we do in prison, and I said,
Yes.
first of all, I don't know where this came from. It was in a dirty bathroom.
It was a new hair tie. They were giving them free in the restroom. There was 3 canisters, tampons, maxi pads, black hair ties. And first of all, I was stunned to see that. I had never seen a thing of hair ties in a bathroom like that. And I always take a picture. Anytime they're giving away free feminine hygiene products in the bathroom, that you could use one if you needed one, I always take a picture because they were so valuable. For 10 years of my life, I spent every single month wondering if I would have enough and finagling and buying and trading with people that maybe didn't have the cycle. And so it just is like this reminder that, oh, you are not in prison anymore.
There's the abundance of it.
Yes, it's crazy. So the hair tie, I got one for me, one for Donice, and one for you. And I felt like we should wear it on our wrist and it should be like our night. This was our night. It was a fun time. And you just immediately didn't even think to put it on your wrist, just immediately handed it to Donice. So that's why you will never, ever, ever. What is that, Taylor Swift? We are never, ever, ever getting back together. I'm never, ever, ever buying you another gift. Not that I bought that.
I'm never getting you another free gift ever again.
Right. Right. The next time there's free hair ties. But we got back to your apartment for me to get my car, and there was a hair tie on the ground.
And it's somewhere in my vehicle. But I made Marcy douse it in
sanitizer.
Hand sanitizer.
It took a hand sanitizer bath, and it's in your glove box.
Oh, okay. Good.
So when your girlfriend's in the car and she opens your glove box, she's going to see somebody else's hair tie there.
That was a setup.
Yes. Yes, it was a setup. So I want to briefly talk. We have a good show tonight, guys. We are talking about the ways that the Texas prison system exacerbates. Is that the word?
Yes.
Exacerbates mental health
Mhm.
and and ignores it, doesn't treat it. What is their reaction when someone is in mental health crisis? So that's what we're talking to. But I want to quickly talk about Texas Letters, which is a compilation.
Have
It's
you
one of those nights,
great name?
Tooch, of letters from incarcerated Texans who have done months, years, and sometimes even decades in solitary confinement. And it is a brilliantly put together book. We were there for the volume 2 book launch. It was extraordinary. Our partners and friends and fellow advocates at the Texas Civil Rights Project were there, along with a lot of families that have incarcerated loved ones. And that's a book worthy of checking out. So you guys make sure and do that.
Yes, please. It was such a great event, and we heard from lots of system impacted folks. Marcy spoke and just was really great. The Texas Civil Rights Project was there, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it. It was Marcy, and I think it'll flow right into our conversation tonight. As we were hearing about what it's like for women in ADSEG, from a friend of ours, someone that we know, right? Juanetta was talking about. She laid out the female experience, not just in ADSEG, but just in general, and articulated it so perfectly. I was in that moment. And I don't know if you, well, I leaned over and first told you that you just get up there and talk tonight because I can't, I wasn't in a good um, space. And then certainly as we were listening to Juanetta, I felt it in my body. I started just, I could feel it. I knew if I got up and said anything, I was going to start crying. Um, it was a lot to be in touch with those feelings. It's one thing to remember what we went through. It's another thing to remember it and then remember how it felt. And when I step into that, and sometimes here often it feels like it's suddenly, it is I am back in the moment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I think it had a lot to do also with realizing we experienced that, or for me, that we experienced those things as a community. Like, it didn't just affect me. It was the hundreds and hundreds of other women that we were incarcerated with. And when we hear another one of those ladies, for me, when I hear another one of those ladies speak on her experiences, it it makes it more real. When I'm talking about myself, I'm kind of able to compartmentalize and, that's this part of me, but when someone else is speaking on it and I'm feeling what she's feeling and I'm remembering those and yes, it takes you back. Um, yeah, and we are talking about mental health care. I'm putting this on without reading it, but John said it's sad how many people in there abuse the system claiming mental health issues just to get the drugs. There are so many that could use what is offered but get put off due to others. So what John's probably talking about is something that I've seen is someone that maybe doesn't have a severe or noticeably outward mental illness, and they're dropping a sick call when they don't feel the immediate need for medication, but they want it because it helps them sleep or helps them stay asleep, that kind of thing. But I will say, every single woman I was incarcerated with probably should have been either in therapy or had some kind of antidepressant. I don't know. Even if you go into prison and you have not experienced any kind of mental health issue, going through the trauma of incarceration causes you to have one.
Well, and I do want to say to that point that John said, is that perhaps they are just going to get drugs, right? Well, that's addiction and that's bad coping skills, right? So if women that we knew who just went and got themselves on psych medication, first of all, some would do that to get out of having to be a trustee because uh, those trustees are the true essence of slave labor. They never stop working. So to avoid that, some people would get on psych medications, but the others that maybe necessarily didn't need it per se for whatever it was subscribed for, because like Marcy said, they wanted to sleep, or that's depression, right? So to go to those extremes to get medication, to self-medicate in the wrong way, I mean, is a problem within itself. And it speaks to the very essence of just the environment there.
And Department of Corruption Stories also did time on a men's unit, and he's saying people even went as far as to look up medical books to see what kind of medicine they could be prescribed. But everything that you just said attributes to that as well, right? I mean, people are desperate for anything that takes them away from that place, and so people that were abusing substances, and I hate to use the word abuse, but that were misusing substances out here, they weren't using proper coping skills, and then now they're even in a harsher environment, and they sure don't know how to cope now, but they know that if they can get some things in their body to numb, and I'm speaking as only as an advocate and ally of the recovery community, so I'm not gonna overspeak my what I don't know about. That's what I'm not gonna waste your time speaking on what I don't have firsthand experience of, just what I've witnessed in there.
Well, I mean, Marcy, let me tell you something. Um, Alcohol was never my problem per se. My problem was my borderline personality disorder, which is this month is mental health awareness and specifically BPD awareness month. But before I had therapy, before I had coping skills, when I got out of prison the first time, I self medicated with alcohol to the point of it being a problem. So when I first got locked up that second time, honey, if I could have gotten alcohol in every day, especially being back in prison and I'm depressed and angry and upset, yeah, I knew how harmful alcohol was. It what led, to the behavior that it did, but I still would have drank it, right? People, people that struggle with addiction, they know, right? But only somebody that struggles with addiction can understand the compulsion to keep using, to keep using a substance in a harmful way. And I think that manifests. What other ways did we cope with all the pain and suffering in there? Well, I mean, what were the addiction? What were the other addictions? I know people used relationships,
Sure.
sex.
Sure, relationships, that attention. I knew people that worked out constant. I knew people that coped with the being in that environment by over cleaning their cubicle or cell, like wiping down everything several times a day. Yeah, Jennifer Mack says, yes, there are people that may misuse medication or sell them to survive while incarcerated, but there are so many unaddressed mental health needs in prison. As a clinician and someone that was also incarcerated, she has witnessed the alarming mistreatment. And that's for sure. We talk about I was on a unit that holds about 1,200 women, and they had one doctor, mental health doctor, and two counselors, sometimes three, and that was it to attend. So they were just constantly putting out fires, right? They were if someone was just completely in mental health crisis, or there wasn't a whole lot of preventative measures. Um, and John makes a good point in the men's prison. He says that it's considered a weakness to admit you have mental health issues. So these men go without help until it's way too late. Did you feel like that was the case for incarcerated women?
No. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think there wasn't. Now, let me say this. There were some women that I knew absolutely had some severe mental illness and to their own detriment refused to acknowledge it. Like, hey, this needs to be a part of your appeal. Like, I remember one girl, high profile case, and she was like, no, like, she wouldn't let her attorneys with her appeal talk about her mental health. She says, I'm not crazy. Right. And that's actually a part of many disorders is the inability to see the actual mental health disorder. Um, but those women were few. I feel like for the most part, none of us really felt weak admitting that we had mental health struggles, and I don't feel like we judged other people for it. Our heart kind of hurt for them. I mean, now there may be sometimes we were crass and be like, girl, look at this crazy motherfucker here, right? Like, but deep in our hearts, I feel like we knew that they needed extra care and protection. And also, because I want to bring this up to Marci, and I know this is hard for some advocates to hear. Mental health crisis in prison is potentially dangerous, right? We don't want to criminalize mental health, and people that have mental health struggles are not dangerous inherently, right? But in that environment, people with severe mental health, we kept an eye on because the potential for them to suddenly go left unexpectedly was always present. Would you agree?
I do agree. Um, I I still don't feel like it was handled correctly with the way that if someone is in that moment where they are in an immediate danger to themselves or others, yes, they need to be separated to protect themselves and others. And no, they don't need to be treated the way they are, what that separation means. Completely, it's beyond keeping someone safe. And this is coming from a person who has been a danger to herself and others and needed to be removed. And that was me in the middle of my sentence. And the way that that's handled is you are handcuffed and talked horribly to and threatened by a group of officers and escorted to solitary confinement, which that would be one thing just to be locked in solitary confinement for a couple of days or maybe till you could get assessed by a mental health care provider. That's not what happens. If you continue to be, for me, I got in that cell and still was. A lot of people, I think, when that door closes, they calm down and then they're fine, and then they have this disciplinary case. And that's a whole different thing, and they're not getting assessed by mental health care. For me, I was still not even close to calming down when that cell closed on me in solitary confinement, and I was acting in such a way that I remember a sergeant who I was very familiar with, I had known for years, had a decent rapport, as not just a regular sergeant, not a crazy, not to use the word crazy on a mental health episode, but just not this overly mean staff member, just normal rapport. And I remember when she looked in the mesh window at me as I was in the middle of this mental health crisis, and I was just so lost and didn't care about anything or anyone, myself, no one. And she looked at me like she had thought maybe I had been possessed by the devil. She was scared of me She was scared for me. And even in that moment of complete disarray, I noted that. Somewhere in my mind, I noted the way she was looking at me, but that got me sent to then the crisis management. I was immediately put on suicide watch. I was what that looks like in there is they take everything out of the cell. They strip you completely down. While I was on the unit, I had a gown. When you get escorted to the mental health unit, to the crisis management center, which is on the formerly Mountain View unit, now the Patrick O'Daniel unit. The gown is taken.
Mm-hmm.
You're put in this cell. It's freezing cold. You are naked. There is not a blanket. Your first day or 2 or 3, um, there's no um, there's no bed or bed frame. There's a concrete floor and then a spot in the concrete floor that's not concrete anymore. It's metal, but you're still sleeping on the floor. It's filthy. You don't get toilet paper. You don't get feminine hygiene products. I mean, this is the way. I'm in complete mental health crisis, and that's how they're handled. That's how it's handled. And you're kept like that for days and days and days. And if they deem you worthy of getting moved on to a place where maybe you're going to get help, which is the Skyview unit, which is the prison psych hospital for Texas prisons, you're there for weeks in that condition. No lights on all the time, except like 3 hours in the middle of the night. They wake you up every 15 minutes. And I don't mean check on you every 15 minutes. You have to respond every 15 minutes. Or they come in the cell on you. They suit up and come in the cell. So you're sleep deprived. You don't have any darkness. It's torture, Toonchi. It's torture.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's because, the only real concern is, well, we got to make sure this person is alive. That's it. Calm down enough. And, well, if they're playing, if they're pulling a stunt and this is not real and they're acting, well, this will break them because it's miserable, and so there's no. I will say that sometimes women who actually made it to Skyview and were there for a while and they would come back, they were more stable. They had been in some classes. Like I remember one particular friend, like her BPD, honey, was psychosis level, right? When you get so far paranoid, you're in psychosis. And she looked better. And it wasn't just, right, like you've got to pass that stage that you're talking about. And now they're like, oh, you must be serious. So we'll send you on to Skyview. And where women would get stable, they would. And then what happens? They get shot back to the unit where there's not that same support.
But Toonchi, that was me.
Yeah.
And I'll say people often ask, like, what brought you out of that? Because Toonchi, just laid out there, I wanted to die. And I didn't just have that fleeting thought that I feel like a lot of people have. It was how can I get this done? Like, this is too much for me. It's too much for my family. I genuinely believed my family would be better without me. And that counselor that I had at Skyview, y'all, she gave me some gems that I took and I still hold and I still think about sometimes. And that was, I will say, but it took me going through all of that. And then let me tell you, the first time they sent me to Skyview, I get there and the correctional officer who transported me was saying, if you get there and tell them folks you want to die, they're going to put you in a 5-point harness. And they use a 5-point harness still there. And still today they do. And so when I got there, you go in a different cell, still same conditions, no clothes, like it's the same thing, except now you have the staff there assessing you. And if they say you're staying, then you get admitted. If they might say you're going to go back to the unit without getting admitted. And so when they're asking me if I have a plan, I'm saying no. Nope, I don't. Nope, I don't. So you know what they did? They gave me a prescription for a light antidepressant, and Denise Scruggs is saying none of those drugs given for mental illness are going to do anything but possibly cause drowsiness, which is a winner in prison. They sure won't produce any high, and any possible positive effects take weeks for regular use. But I will say that making you sleepy, that is a big. So anyways, they give me this, and they take me back to the unit, and they hand them to me in a KOP. So I just went right back to my cell and swallowed the whole card. You know, you just gave someone that's in mental health crisis a card of antidepressants, and I took the whole pill. I took the whole slew of them and ended up having to the whole thing, all that, drink the charcoal. I didn't drink it. They shoved it down my throat. I mean, it was just the whole. Anyway, yeah.
Well,
And so
I'm sorry, but
no,
I
yeah,
wanted
and
to
so
make a point about
yeah.
what you just said, and it's
Okay.
something that we've talked about before is, whether it's come be honest and tell us if you have COVID symptoms. Come tell us if you're feeling like you have the flu. Come tell us if you feel suicidal. You can trust us. Be honest, and you're going to get the help you need. No, you're not. You're going to get punished, and something horrible is going to happen to you. You think your isolation is bad now, so people hide that, just like they hid COVID, just like they hid the flu and other stuff. You knew. I can't be honest with you and tell you, um because you're just going to make this worse for me. You're not going to treat me. You're not going to help me. And I learned that too, Marci, as a kid in the system. You don't tell them what you actually feel. You don't tell your parole officer. You don't tell these people what's really going on. Ask for help. Are you serious? Because this is the way you're going to get treated when you do. Go ahead.
No, I think that's an excellent point, and it just goes right on into my kind of my retelling of my experience was at Skyview. I was able to meet with the therapist that without police presence. We were in a group setting, and there was an officer like outside of the door. So it felt like a safer place. And she was allowed to come to our cell door and talk one on one without an officer standing right there. But when you went to see the psychiatrist, you were handcuffed and taken in and set in his office across the desk from him with an officer standing right next to you with his hand on your shoulder. And so you're handcuffed with this law right here. There's absolutely no way that you can tell your authentic feelings when you have such a mistrust because of what has happened already during your incarceration for prison staff in general. And then to have this officer that not only is he an officer, he's a male. For me, it was for a male. And then not only was he a male officer, he was a male officer that I had zero prior experience with. So I wasn't able to say, well, he's not one that's going to, because sometimes they go back, y'all. Sometimes those officers go back and speak on what happened to you. And one on my unit did regarding my pills, regarding those pills. She, in the chow hall, months after, we're in the chow hall and she's working the chow hall and says it very loudly for my entire dorm to hear, and it was something very personal and private and something that I was still trying to get over. So it's really tricky.
Yeah, it's something that I still tell the youth prisons about. Those officers, we called them dorm monitors, they sat in our therapy groups. And then guess what? Threw it in our face later on. That's why your daddy did A, B, C, and D to you. right? That's why your mama left you and abandoned you for some crack, like just straight up in our face. So we learned that you make up a story. You know, and then those were our therapy settings in the youth prisons. But yeah, you're right. Like when there's a guard present, the trust is now dropped down to almost zero. Um, but you know, I just the prison system says that they have programs. I know they've expanded a little bit in that regard, but I mean, Marcy, I think all of us advocates just continue to hammer away at prison is not the setting for therapy. Okay, so whatever you're teaching me or training me or trying to counsel me on, honey, I'm in survival mode, and I may some of that may filter through in a moment, like you were able to keep some gems that kind of you clung to get through the next moment. um it's not In order for therapy to work, trust has to be established. A person has to feel safe. And there is nowhere in any of the prisons that I was in that I totally felt safe or trusting towards the other women and certainly towards the staff.
No, I feel the same way. It was constantly survival mode. So how can you heal when your mental health, your emotional state, and your physical being is in constant survival mode? And they certainly did give us cards with medication to keep on our person. Frankly, if they didn't do that, they wouldn't have had the staff to run pill line. And that's what it all boils down to. There's a lot of policies and procedures that are in play because they're not adequately staffed or time because there's a lot of medication to be dished out, especially on the unit where I was with so many women, and it was a medical unit as well. Uh, so,
Yeah. You know, I remember, and maybe I told this story before here, and if I have, I'm sorry. I'll be like Marcy's used to me saying stuff over and over. But I remember an older woman who had her appeal denied, and she had a life sentence, and her son came and told her, and she unalived herself right there in the dorm when I was living at Riverside. I was in another dorm. I just moved out, but we saw the ambulance come up. And later on the next day at rec, my friend came up to me and said, "Girl, I found her. I think her name was Pam. I found Miss Pam laying," because we had, those are cubicles. So she just was like, "Miss Pam, she'd just been sleeping for a long time since she came back from visitation." And no, she was dead. And so she was like, I think Miss Pam is dead." And everybody's like, "What?" She had taken those cards that Marcy's talking about, the KOP, keep on person, right? She had taken, I don't know if it was one card or two, but she had saved blood pressure medication and some other KOP stuff and took all of them, and had, she had thrown up in the bed, nobody could see, and unalived herself. So, I mean, it happens even with KOPs.
well, you brought up suicide, and that's definitely a reality in prisons. Period. Texas prisons for certain. I knew personally 11 people that took their own life while I was incarcerated. There were more that I had heard about, or, oh, the girl in J1 Alpha, whatever, but I didn't know personally. Not 9 of those were incarcerated folks, and 2 of those
Mm,
were prison staff members. Uh,
yeah,
all related to solitary confinement, actually. Even the staff worked in that building, which was interesting.
yeah. It when people unalive themselves, um, it usually is not talked about, reported. They're just not very forthcoming. You can imagine the prison system is not. It takes them forever. I mean, they won't even acknowledge heat deaths right now. And it's 130 degrees in the summer in Texas, and we've not had anybody die from the heat. And again, you want us to believe you, but we can't trust you. So, I mean, it's things like that. I want to highlight Miss Scruggs' other comment. If you did while I was talking,
That's okay.
and well, medications are given behind a glass and mouth are checked. Denise, they are. Do you know how many women pocket and cheek their medication? It's not that hard to do.
Even women that don't have ill intentions, like, well, I'm on this psych meds. PM pill line is at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I think on Lane Murray, PM pill line starts like at 1 or something and goes until they finish. Well, some people don't want to take their night meds when they just had their morning meds a few hours before that. And so they would pocket their own medicine and then take it at night before they went to bed. So sometimes it wasn't even for other reasons, but sometimes it was to give to their cellie or to sell for commissary because they didn't have hygienes or food. They didn't have money coming in another way, and that's how they survived in their Texas prisons. Do not pay their incarcerated population anything, and they don't provide things like toothpaste, deodorant, shampoo. So people go through extreme measures to meet their own personal needs, and selling your prescription pills was one of them. And it's very easy to do and very common. And yes, mouths are checked.
Yeah,
Yes, it's
all
behind
the
the
time,
window. And yes, you have to in front of
all of it.
an officer. Uh, and and they might look once or twice, but
Yeah, I mean, it it happens. I'm thinking, Marcy, just all of the mental health struggles. I'm going to agree with you. When reporters and researchers ask me, how many women do you think had mental health disorders or concerns or issues? I said, everyone, everyone. And if you didn't before you got there, which I find very hard to believe, right? Unless you're completely innocent of what you've been charged with, you know, normal, I don't want to use the word normal, healthy, stable people with good resources and strong, healthy boundaries do not have behaviors that lead to offenses in prison. Right now, do I believe it should be punished with prison? No, but there was something wrong with all of us that were guilty of the things that we were there for, to whatever degree. And I believe all of that is rooted in trauma and mental health because you wouldn't behave that way otherwise, right? And
well,
so
that's what we witnessed personally.
right,
I mean, that was
right.
just when when I get to I mean, I went to prison with this mindset that people just belonged there. They were there because they did something horrible, but then quickly realized it was not just this black and white, like they did this and now they're in prison. No, it's when they were 4 years old, they were sold to their parents' dope dealer, and I mean, it was just story after story after story, casually spoken because it was so common among that population. Um, yeah, so uh,
So I'm just I'm just thinking about, well, and I never met a woman in there that didn't have a story of deep trauma. I'm not talking about, you know, my friends didn't come to my birthday party when I was 5, which I'm not judging people's trauma or bad experiences. I'm just saying deep trauma, right? SA and assault and all the horrid things that little girls go through. And so I think it's all rooted in that. And again, Nonice has another comment here. So what else can they do? What can the prison system do? They only have so much control. of others, right? Well, I mean, you're right. There's only so much you can do, but I'll tell you this much: a prison setting, in a prison culture, in a prison environment, like Marci said earlier, exacerbates all those conditions. Okay, so I know that when I was receiving person-centered, strength-based care in the community, I was not going to unalive myself. I had support. But you put me in the prison system, yeah, I'm liable to do it, and it's not like I didn't think about it or have my own attempts. So there is a level of control that the state and the system has. And if they didn't exist, if prisons didn't exist in the first place as places for care and mental health treatment, well, then you would have less of this. Doesn't that make sense?
Well, right, because mental health is criminalized. I mean, it's criminalized in this country. People in mental health crises, the police are called, and they're taken to jail, and so that's definitely, and it's not too far off of about what happens when you're in mental health crises in prison as well. You're taken into a deeper jail, a prison within the prison. I do want to touch on what happens when when an incarcerated person housed in a women's prison in Texas is in mental health crisis and calling out for help. How is that addressed?
Well, it's not. I mean, let's just be honest. It's not. We just had a recent death. That, by the way, do I have this? Hold on, Marci, because I'm real cranked up now. I'm real cranked up.
We can't hear you.
Okay, sorry, I'm real cranked up. Do you see all these, everybody? Pages. Do you know what these are? These are mailroom denials. This is what we received when someone tried to tell us that somebody committed suicide, unalived themselves in Ad Seg at Lane Murray. We couldn't even get the lady's name. So when we say, if it's this level of protecting their ass and they're failing, that's because they know they failed. So you cry out, just keep crying and yelling. Ain't nobody coming. Nobody's coming. And your sisters can't get to you. All they can do is bang and scream on the door too and try to talk you out of it.
Well, and so what happens, right? So you have someone telling the staff, I need to talk to somebody. I need psych. That's the terminology that they use. Excuse me, sorry. I need psych. And those pleas fall on deaf ears. And in solitary confinement, there's this little mesh window. So the people that are housed across the dorm from you on the other side can peek in your cell through that window, out their window, and they see you, making a noose, and they see what you're doing, and they start banging on the door, telling the officer. And that's the story that we heard with this last young lady that took her life, and she was in her early 20s. And that's what we heard, is these ladies banging on the door. And if you guys you all can imagine a dorm with 42 women, 42 cells. And once a few of them start banging, and this is the words that they use, just to be very blunt, she's hanging. There's one hanging. You have one hanging. And they're yelling, and they get their cups. There's plastic mugs you buy on commissary, and bang it against that stainless or that metal door, and it's making this huge noise. And the officers, I don't know that they don't believe it. I don't know that it's that even that they don't care. I believe they are numb to it. It happens so often that it's not even an emergency for them. And then the other thing is, there used to be emergency buttons in those cells. Those emergency buttons have been broken forever and ever. We recently learned from on that unit from the warden that wasn't even an option to get repaired. It would be a whole new system. I don't know. What I do know is if I don't know, they don't come to check to see if it's an emergency. Like the ladies might be banging because a bird flew in one of their cells, which is not nearly as a crisis as someone harming themselves. And that's what we're seeing. And I've experienced that. I've I've worked on the outside yard and been in my boss's buggy riding around picking up trash on the unit and looked up in the window and seen someone. They used the bars in their window, and my boss had to call on the radio for them to go, and the ladies were yelling out the window to us. They're like, "Their laws aren't coming." They're yelling at us on the cart, and we look up and see what's happening, you know? And I have been in solitary confinement when people have tried to harm themselves. Uh, so what can you do? Well, we have to take everything serious. Part of that is also there's not enough people, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, putting people in cement rooms and cages, I don't know what other outcome we could expect. And I remember being a kid in those rooms already with a mental health condition. I remember being an adult in those rooms in the county jail and being so desperate and so, Marci, I was so gone that I hadn't eaten in weeks, and I was on this watch where they had to look at my tray, something like that. Well, what I do is I'd flush it. And so I hadn't eaten in a while. And I remember finally taking a shower. And my little legs, I looked down, they look like little deer legs, trembling and shaking. And I remember trying to dig a light bulb out of the cell. It was like an actual light bulb, but it was high up, and I couldn't. I almost got it. Praise God, I didn't. But the despair, absolute despair, and the no treatment, and the environment, and it breeds despair. The whole place is. Whoever's watching, that if you're spiritual, if you have spiritual beliefs, if you believe in energy, those places have a energy, a spiritual energy, whatever you want to call it. It holds it. It's a culture. It's a spiritual energy of despair. And it does, Marci, when that sergeant said he felt like you were possessed, in a way you were. It soaks into you. And if you already have mental health concerns, it's going to make it worse. And especially we see that in children, in youth prisons, is that in isolation, I remember wanting to get out of an isolation cell so badly. I felt like I was losing my mind, Marci. And I remember clawing at my face. I distinctly, and I was an adult, I felt like I was literally losing my mind. And how did we do this? Do you ever ask yourself, like, how in the world did I often say, I've survived my own hand. It's one thing to survive the abuse of someone else, but to know that you've survived turning your own hand against you. How did we do that? And I'm going to say, I mean, I do have a faith, a spiritual faith, but I think it was the women around me, the girls and the women around me. They were the only support that I had when my parents couldn't be there when I was a child. I was alone in a cement cell for weeks. with no one but myself and maybe some of the other girls. It's the only way I survived. I know what works for me now. Like everybody sees somebody somewhat stable, right? But that's a lot of therapy, person-centered community therapy and help in my community of my friends out here that has helped and transformed my life. On the inside, it was y'all, and that was it. God and y'all.
And I think it was our community inside that we survived together and overcame together. And I think that's what makes it so special about what we're doing with Lioness is that same kind of community. We're at our hour, folks.
Sorry, I just went off and didn't realize
That's
how much
okay.
time was.
I'm so used to it that it's not.
Bring it back now. Bring
We
it
have
back.
a question. I want to start next week's show with the answer to this question, Robin. Robin's asking, what are our thoughts regarding transgender persons being housed in a facility that's not aligned with their biological gender? That doesn't happen in Texas, but save your thoughts because Toonch is ready to go right now. But we'll start our show next week about that. Guys, it has been such a pleasure spending the evening with you. Thank you so much for all of your support that you give Toonchi and I here at On the Recyard. Please remember to like, comment, share, all of those good things. If you're listening, leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you're listening, and we will see you next Wednesday, same time, same place. And until then, sending big love, guys.
Out with us on the Recyard Women's Prison Podcast with